our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Hey, we gotta vote to change the world. We gotta work to build another Ghana. God bless our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Gotta use your power. We gotta put Ghana first. Exercise your power. We be one nation, we gotta live among us one people. We be one family, no matter your. We have a destiny, so come together to build in harmony. Ghana first for peace. And call more destiny, so come together to build in harmony. Ghana first for peace. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my young to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Ghana. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my young to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Ghana. So Ghana, peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. You gotta work to change another Ghana. You gotta work to build another Ghana. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Ghana. So that's all Ghana. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Ghana. You know, like say, we be like say, we for come together. I know they say, we for fight one another. We have a destiny to come together to build harmony. Love Ghana, put Ghana first for peace. Yeah, come on, destiny to come together to build harmony. Yeah, for peace. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana. My end to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Ghana. My house, yeah, Ghana. My end to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Ghana. Yeah, the house, my woman Ghana. My end to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Ghana. Yeah, the house, my woman Ghana. My end to know your man Ghana. Yellow. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Hey, you gotta work to change another Ghana. You gotta work to build another Ghana. God bless our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Hey, we gotta vote to change another Ghana. We gotta work to build another Ghana. God bless our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. must unite for Ghana. Gotta use the power. We gotta put Ghana first. Exercise the power. We be one nation, we gotta live among us one people. We be one family, no matter your religion or where you came from. We have a destiny, so come together to build in harmony. A common destiny, so come together to build in harmony. First for peace. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana. My end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Nika Ghana. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana. My end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Nika Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Hey, you gotta vote to change another Ghana.
Hello.
You gotta work to build another Ghana.
Hello.
Yeah, I was my woman Ghana. For my end to do your man Ghana.
It's okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I was my woman Ghana. For my end to do your man Ghana. You know, like say, it be like say, we for come together. I know they say, we for fight one another. We have a destiny to come together to build harmony. Love Ghana, put Ghana first for peace. Yeah, come on, destiny to come together to build harmony. My woman Ghana, my end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Nika Ghana. So my woman Ghana, my end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Nika Ghana. Get to know what's my woman Ghana, my end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Nika Ghana. Yeah, what's my woman Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Hey, you gotta vote to change another Ghana. You gotta work to build another Ghana. God bless our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Yeah. We gotta vote to change another Ghana. We gotta work to build another Ghana. God bless our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Gotta use the power. We gotta put Ghana first. Exercise the power. We be one nation, we gotta live among us one people. We be one family, no matter your religion or where you came from. We have a destiny, so come together to build in harmony. Love Ghana, put Ghana first for peace. A common destiny, so come together to build in harmony. Love Ghana, put Ghana first for peace. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Nika Ghana. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the Nika Ghana. Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. You gotta work to change your mother Ghana. You gotta work to build a mother Ghana. Yeah, was my woman Ghana. My end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the neighbor, so that's all Ghana. Yeah, was my woman Ghana. My end to do your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the neighbor Ghana. You know, like say, it be like say, we for come together. I know they say, I know they say, we for fight one another. We have a destiny to come together to build harmony. Love Ghana, but Ghana first for peace. Yeah, come on, destiny to come together to build harmony. Yeah, for peace. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my end to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the neighbor Ghana. So my woman Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Hey. You gotta work to change your mother Ghana. You gotta work to build a mother Ghana. God bless our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. Yeah. We gotta vote to change another Ghana. We gotta work to build another Ghana. God bless our homeland, development for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. You must unite for Ghana. Gotta use your power. We gotta put Ghana first. Oh, exercise your power. We be one nation, we gotta live among us one people. We be one family, no matter your religion or where you came from. We have a destiny, so come together to building harmony. Love Ghana, put Ghana first for peace. And call more destiny, so come together to building harmony. Love Ghana, put Ghana first for peace. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana, my end to know your man Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. Peace and love for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. We must unite for Ghana. You gotta work to change a mother Ghana. You gotta work to build a mother Ghana. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana. My end to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the neighbor, so that's all Ghana. Yeah, I was my woman Ghana. My end to know your man Ghana. Yellow, yeah, the neighbor Ghana. You know, like say, it be like say, we for come together. I know they say, we for fight one another. We have a destiny to come together to build harmony. Love Ghana, but Ghana first for peace. Yeah, come more destiny. So come together to build an harmony. Unite for Ghana. Gotta use your power. We gotta put Ghana first. Oh, exercise your power. We gotta live along as one people. We be one family, no matter your religion or where you came from. We have a destiny, so come together to build in harmony. Love Ghana.
Good morning. You are welcome to the Institute for Democratic Governance and to the third in a series of discussions initiated and hosted by IDEG on topics to our democratic governance. This time we are talking about the monetization of our electoral politics, an issue of importance not just to Ghana, but indeed across the sub-region. So a warm welcome to all our participants online and on air, and to you who are here with us. A special welcome to our panelists. They'll be introduced shortly. Welcome also to our media partners. Thank you for coming. This program is sponsored by the kind courtesy of the Danish Embassy in Ghana, Danida, and DIPD, the Danish Institute for Parties and Democracy, as well as GVC, Atinka, TV, and Graphic. So you are warmly welcome. Our moderator for today is in the person of Dr. Emmanuel Akwete. He is the Executive Director for IDEG. He probably needs no introduction, but I'll just say he's a passionate advocate for democratic governance in Ghana and in Africa. He is passionate on the specific issues of local government reforms, transformational governance, and developmental political parties. I invite Dr. Akwete to moderate this morning's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I'm wondering if the lady who spoke and introduced me mentioned her name and what she does. I'm not sure. I actually don't. Did she? Please, can we know you? Yeah.
Yes. So my name is Dr. Esi Say, and I serve here as the Chief of Operations. Thank you. Doc.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. It is indeed my pleasure and joy that we've been able to gather here this morning for this important event to take off. Many of you will recall that we initially set a date for this event. I think it should have been in August. Then we postponed it. And since then, a lot of people who see me say, hey, what happened? Why did you postpone in this webinar and the topic that we've chosen? And for me, it is truly important, a decision we made, because here we are with very powerful panelists, men and the women who have excelled, served the country in various ways, not just in the arena of the state, but in the private sector as well. We have lawmakers who have grappled with this problem, and we have even those who are now campaigning, leading the campaign against monetization of our politics and of our elections. So we're happy that finally we got the opportunity to do that. And not only should we be happy for this, but you know, in the COVID-19 context that we are today, because of the restrictions and because we need to distance ourselves and so on, we are not seeing the hustle and bustle of election campaigns. May I remind all of you that we are in the season that is parliamentary elections. We have only 3.5 months or 3 months to the elections. Okay, probably less. And if you compare this time now to 2016 or 2012, you would see the dynamics are a bit different. But here we are, because of COVID-19 and the importance of the restrictions, we've been able to find other ways of doing this election, probably the calmest, because most of the actions is taking place on radio, on TV, and social media. And the physical space, the huge gathering and so on, we don't see. Now, what that has done is that it has put us in a situation where we are probably listening more to what is being said, and we're trying to understand what different parties are saying and so on, and how they are promising to solve our problems, and the account they are giving of their years in Parliament and in government, and the last 4 years. What is it that they've done for us? So the COVID-19 context encourages, you know, more listening, you know, by radios, talking, and probably a lot of questions we cannot ask, because in radio you cannot, it's not interactive as we would want. But the most important thing is that it is giving us time for reasoning, okay, and for really pondering over what we're being told. And I think in that we are not just looking at problems, but we're also looking at solutions. And in that context, it's so important that the MPP and the NDC have published their manifestos in good time, earlier than they used to do. In 2016, I think it came a bit late. NDC did it in August, MPP in October, but the party that did the first publication was the PPP in July 2016. Wouldn't you clap just because the presidential candidate, you know, yes. So, but they are not out yet this year. However, I think are informing what people think, what they say, and so on. We do not know what it would mean that all the ideas and the criticisms and alternative proposals that are being made, whether at the end of the day, the parties will gather them, collate them, process them, and we think what if we are given the mandate on December 7th, they are going to do to strengthen our democracy. And in that case, I think we are not in the mood of only debating and arguing, but also we are in the mood of deliberating, which would be the best solution to the problem. What are the means? What is the merits and demerits? Should we really go with this? Individuals are having to think through what it is that they believe would work best for them. And that deliberation is an essential part of democracy. We call it deliberative democracy. And we think that this webinar, the core idea is to introduce that, this deliberative democracy, and draw attention that it is good, although COVID is risky, it's created an atmosphere where we can think through to really reflect and make decisions when the time comes. So in that case, I am happy this event is taking off and taking off well. Now, the second point I wish to make is the one that tells us why the topic. Although, if you look through the manifestos, they haven't talked about monetization. We all know what monetization means. And it is not something that conjures a lot of joy and happiness. We either we are uncomfortable and we are angry because we think that the problem or the phenomenon we call monetization has more negative impact or consequences than positive. It makes us feel that if some individuals who are financiers of candidates for elections, once they are determining the outcome of elections because the electorate is giving gifts and all that, the candidates spend money a lot, and that is changing or making us feel that we own our democracy and our voice matters, something that the financiers, So we think about individuals who have money and who are financing political parties. We need not look only in that sense because indeed if members of parties are also paying their dues, probably the influence of the individuals will be less. So we need to confront that idea that how can you be a member of a party and you don't pay dues, which is a resource that, so if that forces the party to seek resources from elsewhere, then you know that you are part of the problem, and so on. But going forward, we must also think of monetization in more disturbing ways. For the first time, especially since 2019, our attention has been drawn to the idea that vigilantes, party-affiliated vigilantes, some are being weaponized. They have arms, they are behaving like a regimented force like the police and spread all over the country, and they use force, intimidation. Yet we need our space to argue, to debate, to feel that we can express ourselves freely. So there is a scare, there is that, what kind of system is developing? So to touch on monetization is go to the core of our governance problems. Then there's a final point you should also be reminded of. Monetization is not just private individuals financing elections of parties and candidates, marginalizing members of parties and their voice in decision-making in parties, or even influencing the state when the parties they sponsored, the candidates they sponsored win, they get enormous influence. We are told that sometimes they have a list of who should be a minister of what ministry. Sometimes they have a list of who should be an MMDC, should be appointed, and sometimes they go beyond, which even the state institutions, the police, who should be in charge of this, who should be in charge of that. These are all things we hear. I think some research would be good to validate them or refute them. But I think the most important thing is that let's shift on the individuals and also think about the state. The governments, our governments, also monetize. Okay, in the Fourth Republic since 1992, when the first elections were held, presidential and parliamentary, we had this problem where they said, every election year, our government spend. So at the end of it, there's accusation, opposition will say, hey, you're printing money, and you have more money to spend. And the lot of money that got in then also created a problem where they said, hey, inflation goes up, and abuse of incumbency. You're using the taxpayers' money for your private campaign, and You're gaining all the advantage and leaving others out. But we also saw the consequence. After each election, fourth year election, the IMF and the World Bank came in. They said we've messed our economy, we've destabilized the economy. The high fiscal policy or discipline wasn't there. Our debts, domestic debts have grown, and we are in a bad shape. Every government, new government elected, inaugurated, says that we are in a bad shape, or we are in a bad way with the economy. So monetization is also about the state, how we exercise state power, and especially governments and power contesting elections as against those in opposition. So it's a complex thing we must think about and not just focus on individuals. In that case, we think that this is a matter so important that should have featured prominently in the party's manifestos. And the compelling reason is that in the next 2 years, Ghana, the Fourth Republic, will be 30 years, and we would have completed the first generation of the Fourth Republic, the first generational span, the time frame. 30 years is a time for real huge transformation of economies and nation building. That's the case of South Asia. That's the case of East Asia, countries in East Asia. When you hear Singapore, you hear Malaysia, within 30 years, South Korea, they transformed the economy, they built strong institutions, they are now global competitors and so on. We've had 30 years, 28 years now, 2 years to go. So are we going to wobble and, do what we're doing now also in the next 30 years? We must think profoundly. So that is why we chose this topic, that we should not just talk about monetization and its impact on our economy, on our security, on our democratic rights, and how on the peace, the threat of violence, and what we should do about it. But we should also think about what to do about monetization, so that in the second generational span of our Fourth Republic, we are able to move very quickly. Our democracy is stronger. Accountable governance is stronger. Parliament is strong, is able to check the executive. Our assemblies are working, the resources are being used for the people, cost of living is coming down, inflation is low, hospital access, all those things that COVID-19 says we should do, and ensure that all the communities have facilities they need. So if we are locked down for a longer period, we'll survive. So this is what we want to do. We want you to start thinking about how, in dealing with the problem of monetization, its negative effects, we would also be able to enhance the positive effects of our democracy and make sure that accountability is at the center of everything we do, from the president to the assembly member, and they show results to the people. So this is why we have made this a very important topic. Now let me introduce my panelists. My slogan, fantastic. You see, my timing is right. You should believe me when I tell you that I even see things behind the door. Honorable, welcome. Now let me go straight quickly to letting you know who our panelists are. And we have been so fortunate, I think I'm going to make that short, because the man who just walked in is our Honorable Osechi Mensah-Bonsu, the Majority Leader in Parliament and the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, MP for Swami Constituency, Ashanti Region. Please welcome him. You see, I have a struggle now. Who should I introduce next? Because we have two men and a lady, and the lady is the president, PPP. I don't want us to say we're always prioritizing men, but Honorable Abangbabin supports the idea that I should introduce Ms. Bridget Jogbedeku. No, he communicates silently with me. Yeah, that's that. So next to the Honorable Majority Leader and Minister for Parliamentary Affairs is Ms. Bridget Jogbedeku, Flag Bearer, Progressive People's Party. I mean, she's made history. This is a huge promotion. She was the running mate, in other words, the vice presidential candidate in 2016. And 4 years later, she has risen to take over the full position of presidential candidate. I think at the moment she is the only female presidential candidate, You may know her eloquence, her ability to engage people from all ages, and commitment to women, young girls, grooming them, mentoring. And actually, the secret is that she was also Miss Ghana. I think she still is, don't you think? Yeah, okay, I don't know the year, but we are happy she's here to represent. And then finally, may I introduce our second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, MP for Nadoli Khalil in the Upper West Region, and twice he's been Majority Leader in Parliament. He's NDC MP, but more than that, he's now considered the longest serving Member of Parliament since 1993. And just he follows in his stead. It is the Majority Leader. He also got into Parliament in 1997, right? So between them you have 4 years. And so we are fortunate to have long-serving members of Parliament, experienced, they've all been in majority positions, and they've worked across. So their inputs and insights into this problem and how to tackle it is so important. On that note, I think that my job is done essentially. I've introduced them. The most important thing I would say, I summarize, we have their detailed CVs, you can pick them up. The most important thing for us is that this is a panel discussion, and therefore it's going to be interactive. We prepared a paper for everybody. I think you've all got copies that introduces the issues, and I've in my presentation summarized it in a way that sets us off stage. So I'm going to take my seat, and I would call the first. I think the Majority Leader needs to catch his breath, because I got the signals that he was coming at top speed, and he was driving himself. So this time, let's give him some resting period. In that case, I think the 10 minutes summarize your views on monetization. Because if we are to demonetize, we must know what monetization is. And demonetization means simply, for us, just making sure that finance is important, but finance should not be at the level where it jeopardizes not only our economy, our democracy, the values we stand for, and even endangers our democracy. How do we deal with this problem? I think some ideas are in the paper, and they would lead us into this. So on that note, may I invite our first speaker. In this case, I think it is second Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Ghana, MP for Nadoli Khalil, the Honorable Aban Bagwin. Please, 10 minutes. You can come here, or if you want to sit, you have the option, because, yeah. Okay, all right, please go on. Let's welcome him.
Good morning to you all. Good morning. Sorry, I can now say good morning to you all. Good morning. Thanks so much, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete of IDEG, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you and IDEG for inviting me to be part of this panel discussion on a topic that is dear to the heart of many, many Ghanaians, particularly we those in the front line of multi-party democratic practice in Ghana. I have been in it since '92, and I can share a lot of experience with you, but the time constraints will not give me that volume of time to do so. But it's important for me to start by saying that Ghana has been actively in a search for what the PNDC described as democratic governance since independence. We've made some progress, but I'm sure you will all agree that the progress is not the effort and the investment that we have put as a country towards achieving that objective. I recall even before the 1992 election, the NCD, National Commission for Democracy, touring the whole country, justices of the Superior Courts of Judicature, who later became the first Speaker of the First Parliament and Second Parliament of the Fourth Republic, the late Justice D.F. Annan. Then the document that was put forward titled A Search for True Democracy for Ghana. Definitely, in 1992, we had a bit of a faulty start in the 1992 elections. There was a challenge, but in 1996, I think we got it right. By 2000, we had been applauded for having arrived as a multi-party constitutional democracy. But immediately after that, we started experiencing more serious effects of some aberrations of what is really known as democracy, not even to talk about true democracy. And so since then, we those who have been in the front line have been raising some weak voices against the new development. But I think now it's got to so much a crescendo that almost all the stakeholders are raising serious concerns about what is happening in the country. We know civil society is seriously concerned, and even the electorate, because they're not getting the dividends of what we all know as democratic governance. And so it's a national concern. It's a serious matter. And I think that it's important we applaud IDEG for putting this together and for bringing us here. Yes, there were earlier attempts at getting consensus on this matter. I recall around 2008, 2007, 2008, efforts of the Institute of Economic Affairs, where some of us were involved, the enactment of a law on the public funding for political parties. That is one aspect of it. But the way it's now being looked at comprehensively, I think this is a new initiative. And I think IDEG, once again, should be applauded. We all know what monetization means. And I think in the Ghanaian, the sharing of what we usually refer to as money and freebies to the electorate in order to influence them to vote or select the candidate that is sharing that freebies or money with them. But it should not only be restricted to the candidates. It also has to do to the whole public service. It's not only the political office holders, but also the public service has also experienced a bit of this monetization. But more importantly, we have to look at the institutions. like the Electoral Commission, like the political parties, and other democratic institutions in the country. You all recall the allegations that were made against the Electoral Commission about some monies being doled out after the conduct of a general election. And the amount that were mentioned were really quite huge. This was not just a part of the politics. There had some evidence to it. Again, you recall even the recent announcement of filing fees and the discussions that is going on. Apart from that, we have to look at the issue of the funding of the whole activities of the Electoral Commission. Should it be funded from internal generated fund, or these are issues we have to look at because help to fuel this issue of monetization, because it lives in the minds of the electorates that there is some national booty where state institutions and officials have access to. And so when you come to them asking for their vote, they will definitely be looking for their rewards. They want to benefit, or they support or not to support you. But as I said earlier on, this is a new development. Even though in 1992 we had a faulty start, we did not experience this. I recall, as I taught my constituency, the constituents themselves contributed in paying for so many aspects of the cost of my campaigns. They even went ahead to cook food, to buy drinks, to brew in my place, Pito, for me and my team to enjoy. Chiefs were prepared to receive you with honor and dignity in playing field to all candidates that came around. But around 96, 2000 and onwards, things changed. And there must be reasons why things changed that way. They didn't change for the better, they changed for the worse. And so if you look at the early scholars who did research in some of these areas, they started bringing to our notice the fact that by 1996, the monies that candidates spent in the elections was equal to about the annual salary of a member of parliament. That was in the early days, after the 1996 elections. I recall one associate professor who worked with us seriously in parliament, Stefan I. Lidberg, and the surveys that he conducted among members of parliament in that period. By 2000 election, after 2000 elections, it has ballooned to about 2 years salary of an MP. And so if the MP has to use his 2 years salary to contest to get a position, then you can imagine where the focus of the MP will be when the MP is in parliament. And so we've had this since the 1996 elections, where elections after elections, we have had an increase in the cost of the elections. And the recent survey by the Westminster Foundation for Democracy and see some figures, and I think those figures were just conservative. I'm sure the members, they talked about costs having ballooned to about $87,000. That at that time was around 500,000 Ghana cedis. And After the 2016 elections, it ballooned to about $200,000, and that is about a million Ghana cedis. I think that is on the average. And I can honestly disclose to you that I spent more than that. You know, it starts with the primaries, and it's not easy during the primaries. Then, when you go into the main elections, the filing of your papers, whether primaries or main elections, involves you handing out something to those who have to endorse your form. That is why it all begins, before you even get to the election. And so there must be some reasons why constituents are asking for the rewards and not waiting for the delivery of defecting from trustees of their power. And so with this, looking at the time I've been given, we'll end here. Okay. And then await the next opportunity to go to the other issues. So the demonetization must be now and not in the future. It's real, and its effect is really disastrous. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm wondering if the experience of the MPs, we could wrap those up and then come to looking at national campaigns, because I think that is where our presidential candidate with us has the experience. I just wanted to see how the majority leader in his 10 minutes would address some of the issues or complement, okay, or corroborate what has been said. We are told that it wasn't, it's evolved, looking specifically at campaign financing, but we also haven't seen the impact after that expenditure. When you now have the power, you're in parliament, you're in government, you're in assembly or in other places. But we know that our majority leader of parliament and minister for parliamentary affairs has been championing this. He's also the MP for Swami. He's been the loudest in recent times. I could tell you in the last, since 2012, probably 2016, and he's not relenting on that at all. From you, your introductory or your complimentary or even disagreement on the points that have been made, your opening remarks, how do you see monetization, and why are you advocating for something to be done about it? Please, you can be here. 10 minutes, yes, thank you. Okay.
Presidential materials, so they can afford to speak from their seats. Honorable
just before you go, did we welcome him to the podium, or we?
Not worry, I don't believe in. I don't believe in ceremonies. I believe in real action.
Okay, thank you.
And let me express my profound gratitude to Akwete and Dr. Jonah for this invitation. My colleague, the second deputy speaker, has given us history and some definitions. So I think I will plunge straight into the issues involved. And in our view, it all begins with the political party's interpretation of the imperatives of Article 55(5) of the Constitution, which provides that the internal organization of political parties shall conform to democratic principles. Every position in political parties become subjected to elections. But should that necessarily be the norm? I do not think so, because Article 55(9) of the Constitution provides that the national executive.
Oh, sorry about this. It's not easy to discuss monetization.
I guess.
Let's proceed. Yes.
Yeah. Also, that the internal organization of political parties shall conform to the democratic principle. But Article 55(9) provides that the national executives of political parties shall be chosen from all the regions. So election certainly is not the only route to the kingdom of democracy. Indeed, election is just one of the vehicles. But so is selection, nomination, acclamation, and other recognized vehicles. In any event, the obvious rationale for Article 55(9) is that the party's national executive should reflect real national character with representation from all the regions. Now, the first post election that we conduct to elect the party's national executives, how do we really conform to Article 55(9)? We are not able to conform to that. The NDC is an obvious breach, NPP is an obvious breach of this. And because the two major parties are in breach, the Electoral Commission cannot hold them to account. Article 55(4) provides, and if you indulge me, I'll read quickly. 55(4) provides that every political party shall have a national character, and membership shall not be based on ethnic, religious, regional, or other sectional divisions. This means that one cannot form a party only for accounts, one cannot form an Islamic party, a Greater Accra voter regional party, or penetrate the TUC and form or get organized labor to subscribe to one party, TUC party, or we can't also have a farmers party, for instance. Now, a necessary implication of Article 55(4) is that at all levels of any party, beginning from the polling station, which is the lowest level of party organization, the membership should reflect national character. By these elections that we conduct at the polling stations, the constituency level, the regional level, how are we able to conform to the imperatives of Article 55(4)? The parties get it wrong at the polling station, constituency, electoral area, regional and national executive elections. In any event, elections are won or lost at the polling stations, not at the regional, even the constituency or national levels. Canvassing for membership, for votes, is at the polling station level, not at the constituency level, or the regional or national level. 55(3) provides that a political party is free to participate in shaping the political will of the people, to disseminate information on political ideas, social and economic programs of a national character. What is required at the polling station level is for the polling station executives to really do this dissemination of information on political, social and economic programs of any political party at that level. It doesn't fall on the presidential candidate, not even on the parliamentary candidate, but on the constituency, the polling station executives. But do they do that? Immediately after they are elected, they recline. They are able to do this. Indeed, the political, economic, and social programs, the content is really expressed in the directive principle of state policy. Do the polling station executives understand that? Every political party is required to weave its manifesto around the set objectives as contained in Chapter 6 of the Constitution. The polling station executives really understand that. And I can tell you that now, when we are in the electioneering campaigns, every candidate has to form his own campaign committee outside the polling station executives. So what do they exist for? The only reason that they think they exist for is to recline, constitute themselves into kingmakers, or should I add queenmakers, and really expect water testing fees, then knocking fees, then the bride or groom head fees, and perhaps after the event, Thanksgiving feast, or from the candidates, regardless of whatever level. The regional party executives submit themselves to that. The constituency party executives submit themselves to that. The national party executives have to submit themselves to that. The parliamentary candidates, the presidential candidates, all of us. So we ourselves are really enforcing this. The charge of police station executives have already related to that. And because the parties have misconceived the intent of Article 55.5 and resorted to elections at every level, the polling station executive, electoral area coordinators, some call them the zonal coordinators, the constituency executives, all now basically see themselves as kingmakers and position themselves, as I've said, to extort money, to have cola nuts, to have drinks, plus some fat envelopes to be given to them. Huge quantities of cola nuts, drinks are given to them. And this happens at the police station level, electoral area level, coordinators, and yet all these are positions to serve the party and or the country. And if people have to make donations and payments to serve, if they get into positions, they would recoup their donations and payments first. And then second, to restock the arsenal for the next battles ahead. And because they consider them as investment, also to harvest dividends from the investments. So also the seeds of corruption, right at the very outset. Whether it's restocking, whether it's recouping donations, whether it's harvesting returns, the vehicle is procurement of goods and services. Corners are cut, shoddy work is done, and the general public, especially the poor in society, suffer. I guess to stop this, the constituency party, the regional party, and the national headquarters party must employ professional administrators at the center, as is done in established democracies. Where we are heading to, really, we are on very slippery ground. I shudder to think what may happen to this country 2 elections away from now. The parties don't need polling station executives. If they do, it will only be for the purpose of money or policing the polling boxes and making sure people turn up to vote on election day. The selection process for a party's parliamentary candidate must involve all card-bearing members in any constituency and not be limited to a small cabal. Once elected, it should fall on the leadership of the particular party's caucus in parliament to assess his or her performance. The constituency party may also be required to submit benchmarked bi-yearly or perhaps quarterly reports on the MPs. Where there is congruence, that is in the 2 reports from Parliament and from the constituency party, that a particular member of Parliament is doing very well, why submit that person again to another election going forward? With presidential candidates, once they get elected, into their second term, which party has conducted elections on them? We have a way of getting them seamlessly to continue. Why subject the members of Parliament to that? Machinery campaign support from the state should be done in order to allow for fairness and equity as provided for under Article 55.11, which says that political parties should be afforded equitable time and access to state media to present their cases. And then one other thing that I guess should also engage our attention is the ceiling on the number of ministers that we have as provided for in Article 78.2. 78.2 provides that ministers of state shall be appointed, such number of ministers of state shall be appointed by any president to assist the president in running the state efficiently. But Article 76 provides for the constitution or composition of cabinet made up of not less than 10 and not more than 19 ministers of state. Ministers must assist the president to run the state efficiently, but cabinet ministers have the additional responsibility of assisting the president of government. Every agreement that comes to Parliament, every bill that comes to Parliament is underpinned by policy that is expressed in the accompanying memorandum and that is assented to by the bill or the agreement to Parliament. If you are not a cabinet minister, you cannot do that. And so, what is the reason for having a very bloated number of ministers of state who, in this case, cannot submit agreements and bills to Parliament? We may have to make a determination as a country on this. Yes, we may have some general practitioners, some versatile ministers who may not fit anywhere, but who could assist the president in many ways. Maybe some number to be agreed on as a country, perhaps 5, perhaps 7, in addition to the 19. So we shall have determined for ourselves an appropriate number of cabinet ministers. Then appointment of ministers from Parliament. We have the Westminster experience, where every minister is appointed from cabinet. Might have served as a shadow minister, and he might have served on a committee for a very long time, and perhaps developed that versatility and deep knowledge about every sector. So when his party assumes the role of government, he becomes the minister necessarily. In the presidential system, we have technocrats, experts, becoming ministers of state. Here we have this marriage. I have ministers, majority of ministers being appointed from Parliament. When you get appointed from Parliament, you expect that those of them from Parliament may be experts in their fields. Other than that, you have served in Parliament for a considerable number of time to have developed that experience and knowledge in order to be able to positively affect our governance. We have first-time members who have no experience in Parliament and who have no expertise in the sectors that they are appointed to. It's all corruption of governance and projecting and elevating mediocrity. It's one of the reasons why we are not making serious advancements in our governance. Maybe the appointment committee, Mr. Majority Leader, Mr. Former Majority Leader, former Minority Leader, current Second Deputy Speaker, prospective presidential candidate. Perhaps you agree that the appointment committee should vet for specific positions so that we can have people with proven, indeed demonstrable competence to affect our governance. Finally, maybe the last thing that I want to touch on relates to the salary emoluments of members of Parliament. Article 71(2) provides for the setting up of a committee by the President to do that. In our 4th year, we don't know our emoluments. And it's all because it's about the same thing with every president. It's because presidents are in fact, they are hypersensitive to public demands. So no president will establish the committee in the first year, or even the second year. They wait until. This year in particular, by our COVID circumstances, so the president has not submitted it yet. When is it going to come? Whenever it comes, it generates 2 levels. And indeed, let me say that if a person is given employment and his own emoluments is not determined, and the person finds himself in office, what is he going to do? To make sure that there is something to cushion himself, using all manner of means, including in particular unorthodox means. But let's draw attention to, apart from Article 71, which provides that the President should set up the committee, which has now become ritualistic, that they do it every 4 years. There are 2 levels of assemblies, the National Assembly and the District Assembly. The National Assembly's membership emoluments is provided for in Article 71. Article 251 is on the junior assemblies, the district assemblies. There, it is provided that Parliament, if I may, Article 9, I'll wind up on that. Article 251 provides that the emoluments of a district chief executive, just like the emoluments of the members of Parliament and others listed under Article 71, the emoluments of the district chief executive or district assembly shall be determined by Parliament and shall be charged on the consolidated fund. Have we heard that any noise has been made on the emoluments of district chief executives? No, because once it was established in 1993, no Parliament has gone to that. There's inbuilt internal mechanisms that ensure that they are paid the appropriate emoluments. Why can't the same thing be done for members of parliament to avoid this occasional brouhaha and the instability that it engenders, such that members who are put in responsible positions, wherever they can have money from, they make sure they have money from. That is indeed one of the ways of monetizing our politics. We should put a stop to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Majority Leader. I think he certainly corroborates what the first speaker panelist said, the design of the system, the overload of elections within party structures, from the lowest, to the highest. It's problematic. And I also picked something which I also got, I think, corroborate. It looks like every service rendered within party structures have to be paid for. So could we say it's the death of voluntarism? Your commitment to a party, you join the party to earn money, to be paid for what you do, but not for your love, not for your passion, not for service to a party so that they can also serve the country well. So parties have turned into, it's like business machines, money-making machines. It's a very important point. And I just like the whole idea that there is the need to reform the structure. The problem, he says, is not getting, is not reducing, it's escalating, and it's getting bigger and beyond control, such that post-elections, you also have challenges, positions and government and cabinet, and so how you get in, and even the state with which you enter, and the demand for appointments, so many people, and so on. So it sets the tone for our conversation. The monetization menace is real. But here we are, the presidential candidate of the PPP, Progressive People's Party. You see, they are progressive, and they like to look at things differently. May I invite her to also share experience? She's not one of the two parties that have dominated the Fourth Republic. Because you are big parties, can I say you also play big, which is why the money issues confront us. Can we now have an, emerging party evolving, growing, and so on, share their perspective and see how they also respond to them. Maybe they have a better way for them. Yes.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll sit.
Yes, please. You can sit.
Thank you very much, IDEG, for this opportunity to hear us out. I think that the conversation on monetization of our democracy has picked up with a lot of steam. This is the second forum I've been in. The first was by Stargan, I believe. I think that CDD has done something as well. And now IDEG, friends of mine. And thank you. That's finally, I suppose the menace, if you can call it that, is getting more and more frightening, that we must address it, and we can't be nipping it in the bud right now, but we can maybe start thinking about how to reverse it. And yes, before I start, I'll give my own example of how monetization affected me in my 2016 campaign. And maybe it's a little anecdote, but in 2016, when we had done our entire several months of campaigning, and the last day of campaigning, I decided to go back to my hometown, Bekolem, in the Afajatu South District, to sit not only with the chiefs, but the chiefs of my clan, to round up my campaign with them. It was in the night, it was the last day of campaigning. And then I sat and waited for them to come and sit. And they came to me and I told them, well, it was my village was the first beginning of my campaign, and I ended up there as well. To say, it's the end of it, and, still campaign to them, it's an issue. I should be the vice president of this country. It ought to be an issue of pride. And after I had spoken for a long time, they looked at me and said to me, "Menyawo, to it, we don't know you." And that I got a shock of my life, because you don't know my father, you don't know my grandfather, you don't know me. Well, since Emmanuel wanted to stress on it, as Miss Ghana, how many years ago, you don't know me, and it made sense because we hadn't given them money. That was the basis of it. Because these people actually know me. I mean, they've known me, they've known my family, they've known everybody. So that was where I saw starkly the stark nature of this monetization of our politics. Because indeed, there were other people, candidates from other parties, who had given money. And despite the fact that I was a member of the clan, and I have roots in my community, I go there, I've been going there as a child, so I wasn't a foreigner to them. They still said they didn't know me. And this is the effect of money, where pride and other values don't matter anymore because people have been bought. But, Honorable Bagbin talked about how in 1992 and 96, it seemed to be going well. I think that the one place where it started, I mean, we've agreed that monetization exists, is that there's a cultural perception. This cultural perception of chieftaincy, where the chief then owns everything, or the leader now becomes the one who has access to everything and owns everything. He must be wealthy to be in that position. And therefore, if he has, he must give us. And of course, there's also that perception that if you're in Accra, then you're in the city, you are better placed. It would draw us to the conversation of decentralizing government and putting more resource in the local elections, local level elections. The thing about not decentralizing then is when, and the two parties have been in power, when people have gone and garnered the votes of the electorate at the community level and are in parliaments, the electorate don't see them anymore. And when they don't see them for another 4 years, they seem to think that, well, this is our chance. And I've heard from delegates who say, I was sitting in a salon once and there was a delegate who told me, this is our chance to make money, because we won't see them again. So when, first of all, the people have been kept in poverty, and they seem to think that the only value now is money and not taking responsibility. We have the effects of monetization. At the national level, I think that the two gentlemen, honorable gentlemen, have mentioned, the Electoral Commission's fees, for example, for us smaller parties who've never been in power and trying to build ourselves up, are restrictive. And it was heard last week, I think, on air when I think it was one of the parliament or one of the officers of the NPP said, yes, the fees should be high so that we cut out some of these small parties who are not serious. I heard it on City FM, for example. So then you want to put in restrictive measures that then cut out the resource of people who are actually capable of contributing to our democratic process. And now our democratic process is valued on the basis of money and nothing else. For me, as a woman, and I like to speak for us women, it's discriminatory because indeed the statistics show that women have generally have a lower earning power than the men. Men are more, have, a higher earning power. And what happens is women, especially at the parliamentary and local level, will probably have to go and raise money. which opens us up to a lot of threats, including, favors, sometimes sexual